less threat, Chuck?
Well, when it comes to ideas threatening, it seems to be that many people are willing to give up their lives for their ideas, and Americans not being an exception to that. I believe that everyone should learn more about each religion would be my twist on that. But yeah, selling Bibles, selling Korans, go for it.
Still a foreigner's faith to Buddhists and Muslims, particularly during the times of war.
I think that it's generally a good thing for everyone to be exposed to all different ideas, different religions, and for that matter, the secular philosophy that says that people should be exposed to all different ideas. I think that globalization indeed brings tension because the world is divided, sadly, between tribes, between people who have very insular views and people who take their religions and make them into something that excludes other people. I think that while I'm open and believe that we should have ideas spreading out throughout the world, I don't particularly like religious ideas, and I'll explain why. Because I think that the philosophy necessary for successful globalization is a secular philosophy, a philosophy that sees each individual human being as, if I were using a religious word, sacred, that is an end in him or herself, that sees reason as the way we approach problems, that voluntary exchange is the way that we deal with our fellows, and I think that that philosophy is most important. If you take any given holy book, you can find a lot of very bad things in it. You look at the Bible, and you have passages that talks about slaves obey your masters and serve them with all sincerity. You have some passages in here about how to sell your daughter into slavery. You have all sorts of blood-drenched passages in here. So I'm glad that many Christians pick and choose the right verses, the ones that I like, okay? But I would rather have a secular philosophy where we examine all ideas with the mind.
John, where are you on it?
I'm similar to the position taken by John, in which I think the real problem is not so much letting the free marketplace of ideas circulate these ideas, but it's the method in which it's done. And I think we often have a conflict between living your faith or your life, which should be an example. And if people like what they see and they want to adopt a similar philosophy of life, they will do so. But if one is down there seemingly pounding them on the head and preaching and trying to force it on them, then I think that is bad.
Unwanted import from the West, Fred?
Yes, I do. I think that what we've heard here, kind of interesting. I think that those most vigorous advocates of globalism unwittingly are exchanging one religious set of beliefs for another, in many cases, or are very close to it, where they are, on the one hand, arguing for a non-judgmental openism of ideas, and then criticizing specific ideas that challenge that. I think what is needed is the medium of exchange more than the message of exchange. I think what is needed is a uniquely Western, I should say, and dare I say Christian origin concept of a free exchange of ideas and the concept of free will, so that people may gain grace by selecting rightly, that without the encumbrance of force and or imposition upon them. So I think that perhaps for the first time in history, every member of this panel may be able to agree with the medium, and that being freedom. And yet we see all of us may agree, we're all generally Westerners. There are those in the world that would challenge that very premise because of their concept that excludes freedom, because it requires a vigorous adherence to an orthodoxy, and I don't think any of us would seek that. Either those of us who are religious or not.
I think you actually make a mistake associated Christianity with the concept of freedom, though. I think that if you look at the history...
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
Oh, I believe that very profoundly, but if you look at the history of Christianity, it's been quite different, that only in the last few hundred years...
You're not speaking of the ideas, you're speaking of people executing policy, that have been equally criticized from within as well as from without. So that's not, that's not a critique of Christianity. It's a critique of individuals.
I agree with the substance of what you're saying. Whether you label it uniquely Christian or even Western, I think is the problem. I would say it's universal. I would say, with, again, a Westerner, I have to quote Cicero, who said that there's not one law at Rome and another at Athens, but a law for all peoples and at all times, and that is right reason in accordance with nature. That is to say, the principles we're discussing, free will, free choice, the use of a rational approach, you can find in Asia, you can find it in Judaism, in Moses Maimonides, in Christianity, in Thomas Aquinas, in Islam, in Averroes, and you can find this. These are universal principles, and some cultures have progressed further in the implementation of these universal principles, and others have not. But I think it's important to recognize that there are universal principles that come from us as human beings with free will.
No, but as long as there are organized religions, for example.
Well, that's a problem.
The thing is, free exchange of ideas on what? On what religion we are talking about? In Saudi Arabia and China, where they banned the import of Bibles, the Christian missionaries have come up with another unique plan. They have one CD that they deliver which can be copied over and over again. And therefore they are able to defy the government's ban on it. Is that fair? Is that an exchange of ideas? Is that involuntary here? I mean,
I think it's dishonorable because it doesn't honor the people where they are. You know, I am a missionary. I was a missionary in 2 countries, and we go to a country not to bring the gospel, but to bring out the gospel. In other words, to bring out to the people that which is already good within them. Gospel means good news. So it's the goodness that is brought out. And you do that, as Joe said earlier, through example, by the kind of living that you do. Now, when people see you living a different lifestyle, they may ask you, why are you living a different lifestyle? That's the golden opportunity to present them why you are doing your particular
free exchange. That's
right. The free exchange. I take exception to the sort of methodology that you were talking about, where it's imposed upon people. Where, for example, in our background notes was a case of a teacher using parts of the New Testament as their only teaching material. I run a Christian university. I used to run a Christian university in Uganda. It's an option. We have Buddhists, not Buddhists. We have Muslims. We have animists. We have Christians there of all different stripes. They take courses at their free will. We don't compel them to take it. It's there, and they all find it very interesting because they're interested in it. The drive comes from within, not from without.
The problem, as I see it, is that many religions become convinced that there is the true belief and that there is no other. As Fred said earlier, you shall know the truth, as though there is no other truth. And there are many Christians who take that so literally that they feel impelled to go about the world and proselytize and convert all people of the world to the truth, which is the gospel. And that becomes a problem when you're trying to impose this upon Buddhists and Hindus and animists and others.
That word impose upon I find inherently objectionable and also grossly incorrect.
But the government...
I know of no Christian missionary, perhaps educate me if those of you do, who go in and actually impose.
Where are you on it, John?
Well, I give 2 things here. First of all, I've seen imposition, or whatever you want to call it. When I was a missionary in Haiti, there was an area in the country where there's only one well, and it was controlled by a church. And if you did not belong to that church, you got no water, no potable water, that is. And so every day, somebody from the church would be standing there, and they would check off whether you were a member of that church or not. If you were not a member, no water. Now, that's one thing.